Welcome, everyone. I'm Aaron Davis, your current club president, and I'd like to bring up for our pledge and reflection Owen Johnson, recently returned from a trip. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There was an interesting article in the HT on Sunday about Rotary and other service clubs. It hardly mentioned service other than calling them service clubs. It seemed to be more interested in are the service clubs growing? What about youth and so forth? I was struck especially by the mention that only about a quarter of Rotarians are in the United States. And yet many people would consider Rotary the quintessential American service club, just like we tend to think of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as the quintessential American religion. And I thought a little bit then about, well, why wasn't service mentioned? We do service, we do it monthly, if not more often. We've had Teachers Warehouse. There are other service clubs. What is it that's eventually could really help Rotary to stand out? And I was thinking one of the interesting things would be to go back in our history to the late 30s and early 40s when we had those tables where community leaders would get together and talk about issues. And wouldn't it be nice if we could do that again now? Something about the convention center, about city expansion, about other issues where we could not only provide service, but provide leadership. The business about the international quality of Rotary was impressed on me a couple of weeks ago when I attended a meeting of the Paris Rotary Club. It meets in the Pompadour room of the Hotel Maurice, which is beautifully located on the Rue de Rivoli, just a hop, skip, and a jump from the Tuileries. You want to go to the Louvre, it's within easy walking distance. You might, if you stayed there overnight, you might find your wallet a little bit lighter. Rooms start at 1,000 euros a night, which is about $1,100. The Paris Rotary Club is the oldest club in France. It was organized in 1920, curiously enough, on the 4th of July, which was on purpose because of the connection with the United States. The formal chartering took place in 1921, so they're trying to figure out when to celebrate their centennial, and somebody at my table said, well, maybe we ought to think about what we're going to do. And I sort of thought, well, Sarah Laughlin and Jim Bright need to make a trip to tell them how to do things. The Pompadour Room is a marvelous place. Sarah commented that the lamps in the room are could be put in here as a distinct improvement. There are the traditional classical lamps. There are mirrors. It looks like the Palace of Mirrors from Versailles. The club membership is 220 people. It is primarily people, well, like in my table, the people next to me were both lawyers. These are people with some considerable substance. The cost of your weekly meal is 80 euros, so we're talking close to $90. It's sit-down service, they provide wine and all that, but it's still a little bit cheap. Women are there, although not in big numbers. The current president is a woman. One member of the club, Maurice Duperret, was president of Rotary International in 1937-38. I was invited to the front to exchange flags. I was a little bit surprised when I came to the front because the members all rose. And I realized that what they were doing is when flags are exchanged, everybody rises to pay homage to the other club. And I thought this was marvelous. The problem was I had prepared about 90 seconds worth of remarks, which I had translated into French. Thank you, Google Translate. I can still pronounce all right in French, but I don't speak it very well. So we exchanged flags, and I would like to now present the flag to Aaron. This is the flag. It shows a ship, which is, by tradition, the ship on which the first settlers came to settle the two islands in the middle of the Seine River.
Thank you, Owen. I'd like to acknowledge that Owen's theme about bringing the community together to talk about issues is exactly something that Charlotte Zidlow has been championing, and that we're taking that seriously. So I'd like to thank today's greeter, Kyla Cox-Deckard, who is our club treasurer, and photographer Charlie Osborne, Community Access Television Services, always, and roundabout reporter Bill Perkins. Rotary family. Well, first of all, let's have the introduction of guests from Sandy Keller. In terms of, come on up. Rotary family, our birthdays this week, by coincidence, Jim Capshew, October 14th, and Dave Meyer, October 18th. And membership anniversaries, Walt Kuhn, 18 years in the club.
Good afternoon, Rotary members. We have several guests with us today. When I call your name, would you please stand up so that we can acknowledge you? First, Len Tiemann is a visiting guest of the Sunrise Rotary. He's a guest of Jim Bright. Chris Borland's here. He's with Civic Champs. Justin Ferguson is a guest of Clint Baugh. Margaret Clemens is a guest of Charlotte Zidlow. Virginia Hall is a guest of Tim Jessen. And Don Bird is a guest of Michael Shermas. John Summerlot is a guest of Hugh Walter. Hank Walter, sorry. Jason Brewington is a guest of Liz Irwin. And finally, Clint Buffington is a guest of Trent. Thank you very much for visiting us at our Rotary today. Rotary is a wonderful organization where you can find fellowship, you can network, and you can find all kinds of wonderful activities where you give back to the community. If you have any questions about Rotary, don't hesitate to contact the people next to you that you're sitting down with and learn more. We'd like to see you again.
Thank you, Sandy. So I have some Rotary Action updates. Most of these I'll only mention briefly. Be sure to check the roundabout for more details. Civic Champs will be here after the meeting to help you with any questions about installing your app. The annual holiday party, I want to remind everyone, Thursday, December 12th, at the Bloomington Country Club. Natalie and Ashley are already starting to plan it, so please jump in if you're willing to pitch in. Let's see, we will have our December 10th meeting on Tuesday, because we're losing 2 meetings in the month of December. Our next 505 gathering this Thursday, October 17th, at a new location, Connor's Tap. So check with me for more information. It's on the near the northeast corner of Henderson and Winslow on the south side. The Rotary Toast is moving well. We have over 40 members of our club, I believe, and guests are registered. So that should be a fun event. We're going to try to arrange to have our members sit together at tables. Rotary District Assembly is coming up on Saturday. We've got several people coming. I'm really looking forward to that. And then we have a Rotary Board meeting this Thursday at the Stateroom West, right here in the IMU. So, I guess I have another half minute. Warm welcome to our most recent new members. Please stand up again, so make sure everybody knows who you are. Von Welch isn't here today. Or Heather Bozarth? Okay, but Clint is here. Clint Baugh and RCV Roofing, and they put up a new roof on my house, so, and did a very good job. So last week, during the meeting. Okay, our local media is chock full of photos and stories about Bloomington Rotarians. Noteworthy is the profile on Lynn Schwartzberg's identical twin, Linda, in Bloom magazine. Just kidding. As well as Abby Henkel and John Barreda. There was a major snafu there with the name. It's Lynn Schwartzberg. And now, Happy Dollars. What are you happy about? Liz? Lunch Buddy's success. And Ron? Yes. Any other things to celebrate or commemorate? Up.
I'm happy that my 3-week-old granddaughter had her family are still in the world.
All right.
I just wanted to mention that this weekend is Ryla, and so get excited. If you're not going to help, get excited and look forward to some photo coverage from the event and a wonderful weekend for our local youth.
Thank you, Ashley. Yes, Ryla weekend coming up. And Julia.
I am grateful that last night I finally got a chance to give my talk on elephants, temples, and flowers to my Meadowwood colleagues, and one of the volleyball players, who is my dear friend, came over for it, did the, helped me with the electronic, the stuff. What is it called? Technology. There's something about giving a talk when you've got to see the people at breakfast the next morning.
Okay, thank you.
I am happy that my email is fixed. I found out it was hacked last week. So if you were expecting an email from me, I apologize. I won't catch up.
I'm happy having just returned from Phoenix, Arizona, where my nephew got married. absolutely stunning setting, but even more so that all of my nieces and nephews, except one, was able to be there, and my daughter from Rochester, so it was an absolutely outstanding.
Congratulations, Peggy. And we've got, don't forget Jean Emery, too. Judy.
I'm happy for the weather.
Okay, and last one, up next to last, Charlie and Jean.
I'm happy. I'm heading out tomorrow to Washington State. My daughter, Erin, which many of you have met, she's a Commodore in the Navy, Paul Harris Fellow, Rotary Scholar. She's taken over the largest naval air wing in the United States.
Congratulations.
Ashley, this will be my third year working at RILA all weekend. Lauren and Joy do so much work to get these students there, and I just don't think we give them enough credit for what they do. And then this is a certificate they all get at the end of the, on Sunday. Joy did this for us, and I'm going to put the names on it, and I apologize for spelling your name wrong, but I call it Lauren Wood or Snyder. I know.
I do not build houses.
I am so glad I had you prove it. But anyway, kudos to Joy and Lauren for all their hard work. It's been a fabulous weekend, I'm sure.
Thank you, Jean. And now we'll have Charlotte Zidlow introduce today's program.
Okay, I am very happy today to introduce our program. I'm working. Can you hear me now? No. Okay, I'll talk further. Can you hear me now? Okay.
Hold it real close, Charlotte.
Very close. Okay, I'm very happy to be here today to introduce one of our members, Jim Capshew, with a few surprises. First of all, it is his birthday tomorrow. I didn't know that. But I asked him to come to speak about Herman Wells and his role in his interaction with the community, which is unexcelled. And I asked the interaction between the university and the community, I think, was at a high point when he moved here in 1964. So it's interesting to learn about what Herman Wells and what he did with the interaction with our community. But Jim Capshew is a surprise because I found out that, first of all, his grandfather was a stone cutter. Imagine that. A stone cutter who moved up here from Bloomington, which also has limestone. Not so good as ours. And he moved up here in time for his son to have a son, Jim Capshew, who's been here pretty much ever since. Jim went to graduate from Bloomington High School when it was Bloomington High School. And then he went to IU, and from there, after getting his bachelor's degree, he went to the University of Pennsylvania where he got his doctorate degree. And he is now a professor of history and philosophy of science. I don't think everybody knew that. I didn't. And has been, and this is the shocker, for 30 years I said, but you are only 20 years old now. How can that be even so young? Anyway, Jim is going to talk to us today. He's also the historian of Indiana University and has done an enormous amount of work on the bicentennial history. And is a very, and loves flowers, I found out. He has wonderful jonquils and daffodils in his yard. So Jim is a surprise to me. He's just full of surprises. And I hope he brings something to us today. So welcome Jim Capshew, one of ours. Thank you.
Jim Capshew.
Thank you, Charlotte, very much. So, a couple weeks ago, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, Charlotte called me up and said, I want you to talk about Herman Wells and community relations in Bloomington. I didn't really ask why I should do that, because I do try to pay attention to my elders, and so I went ahead and said, sure, I'd be happy to do that. So this is kind of a Charlotte-inspired history lesson, local history. So I want to begin with a quote from our current mayor, John Hamilton. He spoke at the IU bicentennial ceremony a couple weeks ago, and he quoted Daniel Patrick Moynihan, who said, if you want to build a great city, create a great university and wait 200 years. Well, we've done it, right? The city and the university are 200 years old. So that tells you something about education is the long game, okay? And Wells was a master in that long game. So I'm going to start with a Bloomington postcard from the late 1950s depicting the brag points of Bloomington. So you can't really see all the letters, but they all have buildings or facilities there. So Bloomington has 11 letters. 3 of the letters have city features, and 8 of them are IU facilities, okay? So obviously, IU is a big part of Bloomington, even in the public imagination. So these are the list of the people, and the list of the features at the top are the city features, and the bottom are the university features. Without IU, Bloomington would be like Bedford or Martinsville. So, in his autobiography, Being Lucky, Dr. Wells said, from the beginning, I fell in love with Indiana University, and the romance has continued to this day. So he was a 19-year-old sophomore student attending IU from Lebanon in Boone County in 1921. He was very much involved in activities on the campus, Sigma Nu, the Union Board, the IDS, the band. I'm not quite sure about when they started talking about the Marching 100. That's some of my research currently. He hung out at the Book Nook. He overlapped with students like Hoagie Carmichael and Ernie Pyle. In November of 1921, a few weeks after he got here, the KKK had a parade in downtown Bloomington with university participation. Some of the students were there. He remembered as a silent, eerie, frightening kind of thing designed to show the enormous strength of the Klan in the community and to silence the voices of those opposed. So Wells made his name in banking. He was a student in the School of Business, which was called Commerce and Finance. But then, and I'm not going to go into all the details about his banking career. If you need to know more about that, I can give you some references. But he basically returned back to the university. He was an instructor in economics in 1930, but he was also working for the state. He was in the bank. He was very much involved in the reform of the banking industry in the state, and was part of of that reform effort. So he came back as the business school dean in 1933, and served for 2 years. And then he became president, acting president, for 2 years. In 1937, and then he did such a great job. The trustees realized that they had their man, and so he served as president for another 25 years until 1962. Then another 38 years as university chancellor before his death in the year 2000. So let's talk about Wells. So this was an early speech, actually, when he was an acting president, about to the Bloomington Chamber of Commerce. I'm interested in Bloomington's future because this is my home and I love it. And while I'm not a native son of the city or the community, I hope the circumstances are such that I never have to leave here for residence. So he kept that promise. There was another reason why I'm interested in the Bloomington's prosperity in the future, because he's part of the university staff, okay? The progress of the university at Bloomington depends in no small degree upon the progress of the city at large. So he was very much involved early on about having good community relations. He talked to the Rotary Club, to Kiwanis, to all the service clubs, both in Bloomington and around the state. I just found out from Owen that he was an honorary member of the Bloomington Rotary Club. He did talk to the Bloomington Rotary Club in 1953 in January. So this is sort of the beginning of sort of his focus on Bloomington. So then I want to just talk about him as a servant leader. He did all kinds of things, as most people know, about the learning environment. He increased the size of the campus from 140 acres to 1,800 acres, the current size. He cultivated the arts and culture. He was very much involved in internationalizing the university, having foreign students and having foreign languages and area studies. He was very much involved in academic freedom, especially for Dr. Kinsey. He was very interested in cooperation at all levels, both locally, state, regionally, nation, and international. He was a major figure in the CIC, the Committee on Institutional Cooperation, which is the Big Ten Alliance. He was really the guy who really got that going in the 1950s. He was also very much interested in the natural world and also human culture. So one thing I sort of summarize his attitude is that the university did not belong to Wells, even though people wanted him to lead forever. Wells belonged to the university. Okay, so he was a worker. He was a servant leader, and he was taking that to heart. So then we've got Indiana was overlooked year after year in the National Municipal League competition for All-America City. In 1958, Bloomington became the first city in Indiana to receive the award All-America City for its general excellence. Okay, that's a pretty interesting thing, and we've had a couple other ones since then. So this is part of what they do is to look at all the aspects of the city. If you look on the bottom here, it says that limestone, Indiana University, television, which is a big thing in the 50s with RCA, and then electronics. We had Sarkistarzian and other places. So this is really the beginning of this, and then when they had this, they had a really nice banquet held at the Alumni Hall in this building. Herman Wells was a Toastmaster, presiding over the festivity that included accolades for Mayor Tom Lemon. But all was not well in Bloomington. Wells was very interested in anti-racist policies and practices. And so he was, if you look at the whole list of things he did, when he became president, he hired an African American as his residential houseman. And that was a way for him to keep on top of concerns of minority students and to do what he can do. In the 30s, he granted the International Commission official status at the university. He integrated the IUMU Commons in 1942 into the later on we've got the 40s. A lot of things were going on. He integrated the female dormitories, and in 1944 he presented a lay sermon the church at its best at the First Methodist Church. And I'll talk more a little bit about that. Then in 47, after the war, he integrated the IMU barbershop with hiring John Plew, a white man who would be happy to cut black hair. George Califair integrated the Gables with Wells's assistance, and then Bill Garrett became a starter on the IU basketball team, the first starter in the Big Ten. So in 1950, he rebrokered agreement with the Bloomington restaurant owners who were still practicing some racist policies. So what I'm saying is that he really tried to do it not sort of in a confrontational way, but to really work with the community to help the minority population and to become. He wanted to repudiate racial discrimination and then champion egalitarian attitudes. He also, not only in the university, he also went public, and this is his late sermon in 1944 during the war. He went beyond the anti-racist rhetoric. He said, "Our renunciation must be personally implemented by deeds. Our actions will be the measure of the sincerity of our words." Okay, so he basically talked the talk and actually did the work. So then I'm moving to another area that you might recognize. This is views of Kirkwood Avenue. The smaller one on the left is looking up to the university, and then the other one is from the university looking down to the courthouse area. So it's very glaring. There's no shade, there's no trees, right? It was never, it never used to be like that, okay? So this was a view in the early teens from the university to the courthouse, okay? It was a tree-lined street. And so why did this change? Why did the trees get cut down? Well, the mayor who proudly led this all-American city had all of the large street trees cut down, 45 in all, with no notice, with no consultation. Wells was quite angry. Other people were angry. There was a community reaction that was uniformly negative. Now that the wood's gone, they'll call it simply Kirk Avenue, okay, or perhaps the Great Black Way. Yeah, to me, these trees represented beauty and dignity. Nowhere else in the city did trees offer so much aesthetic value. So this is something that I grew up with. Kirkwood has always been sort of this barren area, right? I mean, there's some small trees there, but not these big trees that we find elsewhere in the city. So that was, I think, an error. So then the mayor also didn't like the courthouse. Bloomington is stone and steel and wood and flesh and blood and brawn and brains. It's an old square city hall and a monumental courthouse of Indiana limestone of questionable beauty and telltale age. Okay, so this was 1961. So during the 60s, there were a lot of people who said, let's tear down the courthouse and replace it with either new, modern building or parking or something, right? So it's all new. Well, then a lot of people didn't like that idea too, and so there was a lot of pushback. In fact, my first letter to the editor was about saving the courthouse in 1976, and so I'm happy to be part on that, be on the right side of this this thing. So then, so this is the looking at the his work in historic preservation, right? Wells lived in the Woodburn House from 1932 to 1957, during some of the time during his presidency, right? he could live in the Bryan house on the campus, but President Bryan was still alive until 1955, and so President Bryan kept living there after he stepped down as president, and so Wells was happy in the Woodburn house. He also was the guy who engineered the buying of the Wiley House for the university in 1947, and so then that was restored in the early 60s, and then the other things here, we've got the Historic Preservation Commission in Bloomington, and then Bloomington Restoration was founded. The Cooks and the CSV started the Cochran House, the renovation of that, the Save the Courthouse campaign, and then the old library, which is now the History Center. So this is the beginning of sort of in the 60s and the early 70s is the beginning of historic preservation, the idea that we could save and use these buildings. And of course, there's a lot of other things that happened later on that continued this idea of not just tearing things down, but using the respect for natural, for human buildings and things like that. So so then we got then I'm getting close to the end here. So he also supported what I call public culture utilities. He was very much involved in the efforts for WFIU. In fact, Bill Kroll, the first general manager, said the conception and development of WFIU was entirely due to Dr. Wells' foresight into what broadcasting could do to benefit the institution and the state of Indiana. Okay, so this is something that 1950 was WFIU, and then 69 was WTIU, and then he also was involved in the founding of the community radio station, the WFHB, in 1993. One of his assistants was very much involved, Brian Carney, and he convinced Dr. Wells to support and contribute morally and financially for the new radio station. So this is really sort of a brief introduction in terms of what Dr. Wells did for the community and in consultation with other people around the community. So I just want to summarize. So the long-term economic and cultural impacts, one was the IU as a major employer. Then we have an abundance of professionals, teachers, doctors, and attorneys. We've got low vacancy rates. I think we also have a fairly progressive city government. And then we have a vibrant culinary and music scene that was, it didn't happen with Dr. Wells, but he brought people in who were supporting that, people from other places, other ethnic groups, and the internationalization of the university was contributed to that. So that's really what I want to talk about, and I appreciate Charlotte's urging me to do this, and hopefully we can have a couple of questions and things. So thank you. Jim.
Jim, we are so blessed to have had Dr. Wells. He is an Indiana icon. But I just wondered, I know you knew him better than anybody in this room. What would Dr. Wells think of the city of Bloomington and of Indiana University today if he were alive here with us?
Next question. No, it's a big question, right? And so, yeah, I think he was very optimistic about the progress of the university. Even though if there's any temporary setbacks, he was always thinking that education is a long game, and so you have to keep playing the game, right? And to keep on working toward the improvement of the university. And I do think that he would be very appreciative of some of the things that are happening now in the university. But I really can't, I want to maybe move on to another more tangible question.
Jim, the question reminds me of what Dr. Wells said about the School of Informatics when it was being founded. He said, Well, I don't know what it is, but I'm all for it.
Right. He wasn't afraid of the future. He really was. He was not afraid at all. And he depended on people sort of being, you know, reasonable and thoughtful and things like that. So he was very, you know, always looking for the new thing, right? But also keeping in mind the past, right? He had a long history with the Wiley House, you know, 70 years or so. I mean, he knew about the Wiley House when he was like a junior professor, right? Jim.
I know that I've been told, I think I read it in Being Lucky, that he did not care for, it's called Valentine Hall.
Well, he says that was one of his major mistakes.
Yeah, but I was wondering, you know, when I was a student here, Wells Library wasn't Wells Library. At what point was the Wells name put on the library, and was Dr. Wells still living at that time?
Well, he was the head of the naming committee, and for many years, and one of the policies was that the university will not name a building after a person until they've been dead for 5 years or more. So the idea of naming the Wells Library occurred immediately after his death, but they waited for 5 years in respect for this policy. And so it was named in 2005. Yeah. Charlotte.
Real close.
Okay. Well, my question or my statement is, you're absolutely right. In the 60s, the majority of people in the power, especially the powers that were, felt that the courthouse was useless and should be destroyed. And when we worked up, we decided that was not the right way to go. When I was a county commissioner, I went to Dr. Wells and asked him to chair the committee, the state and courthouse committee, and I think his involvement and support was very helpful to make it happen. So add that to
Yeah. Thank you. Jim.
Personal anecdote. I grew up in Mooresville, and I ran track where Tulip Tree is now. And we need to be indebted to President Wells for his foresight. All of IU property east of the bypass, he was responsible for acquiring during his tenure. When you think about the foresight in acquiring that land, was absolutely huge. As a graduate student here, I was enamored with the Benton murals, which is another whole story all by itself. But they would not exist or be part of IU were it not for he. He found them, knew about them, and made sure that they came here and were installed across the campus, as you know, and we still are doing today. We are unfortunately victims of revisionist history, but they're really special. If you've never taken the time to go look at all of them, you should. But they're here because of him.
We need to stop. But if you want to hear more about the Benton murals, read my book. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Charlotte. Next week, October 22nd, we'll be at the IMU right back here in the Frangipani room for the last time for several months to have our club assembly, and it's going to be on Rotary and peace building. Next week's greeter will be David Meyer. Pledge and reflection, Sarah Laughlin, and introducing the guests, Efrat Pfefferman. And Bill Perkins will continue to be reporting for the roundabout. Thought of the week. I have a long quote from John Huco, who is the General Secretary of Rotary International. All gathered here are unofficial diplomats and peace builders of our age. When you build a system for clean water, you are a peace builder. When you help out a student struggling to graduate, you are a peace builder. When you launch any project to support education, health, or economic development in your local community or elsewhere, you are building the optimal conditions for positive peace. Now, and we'll be hearing more about that next week. And now please rise to recite the four-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do, first, the truth, second, fair to all concerned, third, would be beneficial, and fourth, would be beneficial to all concerned, and fifth, is it fun?